Good morning, chess fans. I'm playing the second of the advanced bots in the chess.com application. Its name's Wendy, ranked 1500 in terms of rating. I beat Antonio last time, so I'm just working my way up in progression against the different bots. And we're going to start, as always, d2, d4. I am a queen's pawn player. I always play the same first 5 moves against every black setup. Black going for a King's Indian style fianchetto. Again, I continue with my third move, e3. My fourth move, and the move that really distinguishes my system, it is a passive move, but I've had a lot of success with it, and that's to move the bishop to the e2 square instead of placing it on the more active d3 square. There's a whole line of reasoning why I don't put the bishop on d3. Objectively speaking, the bishop on d3 is more active, the Kali bishop, and better, but this is my system. Okay, so we're not going to go full King's Indian, which would have been a d7, d6. Instead, black is going to make this rather unnecessary move at this point, which is c7, c6, blocking the best development square on c6 from its knight, which is fine. Welcome to that. I'm going to continue my own method of development, which is c2, c4, followed by moving my knight to the c3 square. Notice I'm not blocking my c-pawn. So we have kind of a Slav setup now. Black is threatening to take this pawn, which would I would recover with the bishop, perhaps forming a battery. Let's go with development. Pressure on the center. Okay, so Wendy 1500 is supposed to be an attacking style bot at 1500. Antonio, which we defeated yesterday, it was a balanced bot and played poorly in my estimation. This opening by black is very standard. Nothing particularly wrong with it. I don't know who stands better. Perhaps white has a slight edge. When I move my bishop to e2, I know that I'm not going to get a huge edge in the opening. That's not really the point of playing this system that I do. It's more to keep myself in the game, not being swept off, get my king to safety, get my kingside pieces developed, get my share of the center. That's the purpose of my opening system. Black has a free hand to do almost anything they want, and they can get a reasonable position. What I find, having played hundreds of games with this opening system and done many reviews using the analysis engine of chess.com, is that I do get a pull, usually, with white. The black's best reply to my system is asymmetrical. If white has any sort of advantage at all, it's just the teeniest sliver. I'm not going to get a huge advantage. Now, moving the pawn here from a7 to a5 is winning black some space. I do often like to expand on the queen side in this system. The knight on e2 does support expansion. Sometimes to break up symmetries, I will play c4 takes d5. However, that would probably just make this situation just more symmetrical. Look at this hole now that's open on the b4 square thanks to white's rather ambitious a7, a5 move. That hole can be occupied by my knight, potentially, or my bishop. If I take here, then I will be giving the development square c6 back to black if they want it. Possibly black will recapture with the knight or the pawn. Probably either move is possible. One might be slightly better than the other. I can stop this attempted expansion of space by playing a2, a4, increasing my grip here and putting the kibosh on any further advances by black, a5 to a4, a3, and so on. This is very much modern chess, modern computer chess specifically, which is advancing the H pawn or the A pawn, the two flank pawns down the board. It creates a rather interesting set of positions and problems that were underappreciated throughout most of the history of chess until AlphaZero and other computer systems started playing these H pawns forward and these A pawns forward, and we saw the potential. The pawn cannot further advance because I've got the A4 square covered. Now in my system, I usually have the problem here. I don't usually, I always have the problem of how do I develop my dark squared bishop with a pawn obstructing me like a bone in the throat and my own pawn on e3. And the answer is I will usually fianchetto it to the long dark squared diagonal. And I do that by playing b2, b3, and then bishop b2. Or in some cases, it's very possible, often in this system, for me to play bishop to a3. It can create some worries down the a3 to g f8. The a3 to f8 diagonal. However, black will most likely sidestep the rook to e1 or e8 at some point, and my dark square bishop on this diagonal will be striking at area nothing once the e7 pawn evacuates and advances out of range of my bishop. The advantage too of b2, b3 is I can recapture. I have the option of recapturing on the c4 square with my b pawn. And I'll be tying down this a4 square, this time with a pawn, preventing this advance. So we're going to play this. I think it's the most logical. Here comes the knight. I've talked a lot on previous videos about knights and my problems and the fits I have playing against knights, particularly knights that are outposted in the center or somewhere on my side of the board. I tend to undervalue them and try to play around them, and very often I get punished when I do so. I need to be more active in my style of chess, dealing with the enemy's outposted knights. When here, Wendy, apparently an aggressive attacking bot, is moving in with the knight. Notice the bishop on e2 has the advantage of there's no pin when black places the bishop on g4. There's no pin because obviously my bishop on e2 is between the queen and the knight. Capturing here, typically, it's an idea. What happens is I will capture the knight. The black will recapture with the pawn. Now black has a pawn on e4. That will force my knight to some kind of decision. Almost always it's pulling back to the d2 square, putting pressure on the pawn that's now on e4. Black will protect it. There's a couple ways black might want to do that, maybe here, but most likely f5. And I'm okay. Practice has shown that I tend to be okay, even slightly better. You can see the immediate concrete threat is knight takes knight. I will continue, though, my policy of development before complications. I can also play queen to c2. And now I'm threatening to take the knight and win the pawn. If I play queen to c2, though, bishop to f5 is the most common reply. Then I can relocate my bishop here, and we have a lot of interesting tension. Okay, we have a lot of interesting tension at that point. But let's just keep everything calm. And we'll move the bishop to b2, and if black wants to exchange the knight, as she has done here, that's fine. You've just wasted 1, 2, 3 moves to my 1 move. And now I can take here. This will come. Maybe I'll bypass it. We're fine. So off comes the knight. Okay, that's a target. This is possibility fix it here. Then black has a bathtub, which is a particularly pretty strong. Then I take here, possibly trying to create a weakness on the B square. Okay, so let's look at what black is planning here in this position. Queen D6 attacks my tender spot H2, but I do have a knight defending that pawn. This is a very strong defensive structure, part of my system. Black can't easily attack with my pieces arranged as I have them in the red highlight here. And that's one of the strengths of my opening system that I'm playing with bishop e2 on move 4. Because black can't attack easily, I'm not swept off the board. Even if I could play Magnus Carlsen and I will survive until move 12. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Magnus Carlsen will not sweep me off the board. Now, he might grind me down. He'll almost certainly beat me in the middle game. I'll be severely outplayed during the middle game. But he's not going to beat me in the opening. And even Magnus Carlsen is not going to get a big edge against my system. He's not going to get a big edge. All right. Okay, so the final task to completing my development is connecting my rooks. The way I want to do that is get my queen off the back rank. Where I want to put her, if I can, is the C2 square. But that will invite, again, bishop F5. I might want to play H3, creating some luft for my king, and the famous bathtub pawn formation, which is very strong. Again, H3 I don't find compromises my position at all, even though I do make a hook. The bathtub is very strong. The interior pawns can always move up for the defense. The knight covers the hole quite well. So bathtub with the knight on F3, again, very solid defensive formation. That will prevent completely black from playing bishop G4, and then I can relocate the bishop to the D3 square. Yes, now I know I've lost some tempo, and then I can get my queen to C2. We will be biting on granite, but I will have connected my rooks. I can gain space here if I want, attacking the queen and opening the diagonal. It's not, I think, not how I want to proceed. I do have a somewhat loose bishop. I want to get my queen protecting this. Loose pieces drop off. This bishop is unprotected. If for some reason my d pawn disappears from the board, this is a tactical motif, just capturing the bishop. Knight here is a possibility, gaining a tempo. This might be coming. It's hard to say. So let's be non-committal. And let's move my pawn to H3. I don't believe it's wrong. It might not be the best move in the position. Now black is getting ambitious. My knight can definitely come in now. The position is a little blocked. I prefer semi-open positions. I play them better. Block positions, even against weaker opponents, can be hard to win. It requires a certain amount of divination to figure out how that block position will eventually open up, and you got to have your pieces ready on the correct squares. Not an easy task. Notice how F7, F5 has restricted the mobility of black's light squared bishop. The light squared bishop now angrily biting on its own pawn. He's not a happy piece. Even if he comes out, he's still restricted by his pawns. He is defending b2, but b2 is not under attack. The knight will further block him. The knight could come to a6, very possible. The knight could come to a6. I will defend here, preventing the outpost. Now queen c2, very playable. I'm not afraid of being attacked. Like I said, I believe I have sufficient resources with the bathtub formation and my kingside pieces. Let's connect my rooks. Full scale. Wendy, the 1500 bot, is playing quite well, I think, in this position. I am a little passive, more than just a little passive. Black playing aggressively, playing with optimism, moving the pawns forward. Look at this. Black has 4 pawns on the 5th rank. Now the question is, do I want to take? Looks like there's a pawn issue for black. So I'm not really understanding the idea after I exchange pawns and then recapture with my bishop. Now I've won 2 pawns for the cost of 1. That bishop would be loose on the b5 square. Loose pieces drop off, but I really don't see how I don't see how black capitalizes. So let's go ahead. It looks like a free pawn, a healthy pawn. Let's see what black has in mind in this situation. It is, as I thought, queen to b6. Where is the black queen going? My strong point on d4, not under any real pressure. That's why I played d2, d4, followed by e2, e3 in the opening for this strong point, further made strong by a knight on f3. As part of my system, again, my system is castle the king to safety, get the king side pieces developed, and tend to with a strong point on d4 for my share of the center, all of which I have. Now this light square bishop's going to have to, we have to do something with it. So we can move it, we can create a counter threat, we can defend it. There's a couple ways to defend it. I can defend it with my queen by moving my queen to a light square, or I can defend it by moving a pawn to a2, a4, which would fix this weakness now. Now it's an outright weakness. It's an attackable situation. Black may attempt to liquidate the light square bishops, in which case my backwards b3 pawn could become a weakness of my own. I could simply retreat the bishop back to e2, where it's not particularly useful because the knight doesn't need protection and there's no potential for the knight to get exchanged easily. d3, often the best position for the knight in these Kali-like setups, but clearly the light square bishop is biting on granite if I move it to the d3 square. Queen on d3, often very strong in my system. It's inviting the queen can get overloaded quite easily here because the queen is defending the dark squared and the light squared bishop. Black bot has not developed any of the queen side pieces so far. It's just been all pawns on the queen side storming forward. So I feel like the best move here is a2, a4, defend the bishop. Bishop back to a4, maybe not bad. If black wants to exchange the light squared bishop off, that's fine. Then this could come. If black moves the bishop here, we can defend it, and then exchange, 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 exchange. I'm not sure if I'm really any better there. The knight won't be able to develop so easily, but the pawn is just hanging out there. I will have pressure up the A file, and not a particularly good thing. This center pawn is unmolested, unfortunately. I'm up a pawn. I don't know if I want to complicate the situation any worse than it already is. I simply may withdraw the bishop back to e2 and just wait for the bot to make another mistake. Sometimes you have to do that in chess. You have to wait for your opponent to make a mistake to win. In fact, your opponent has to make a mistake to win. The white and black start with the same number of pieces in the same position on the board. White does have the first move, but chess theory suggests the first move by itself is not enough of an advantage to win a game. And for that reason, one of the players has to make a mistake. Black has already made a mistake and given me a pawn. The compensation is not clear. If I move the bishop back to e2, I'm just looking into the future now through the time machine. If there is somehow an exchange on f5, this will become open, and the bishop on e2 is actually kind of in the way of me taking advantage of that semi-open. If I move here, there's always a possibility of sacrificing because of the battery. I mean, there's potential ways maybe to get through here. This looks quite interesting. Not possible though at the moment. I've been thinking about this in between my sentences that I'm speaking. But the first problem though is, how do I deal with this bishop? I don't believe I have really good square. I think I'm just going to move back, and if I'm going to do this, I'm going to stay on this diagonal, and if black wants to exchange the light squared bishops, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Since I'm up material, exchanging pieces is good. The black has now got the queenside into the game. However, the knight, because there's a white pawn 2 squares away, this knight is semi-dominated. I've got a good grip on this e5 square. The knight can't come to b6 because its own queen is blocking it, and the knight can't really get to this square because the rules of chess stipulate knights can't move in gigantic L. Pythagorean theorem style moves. Okay, the Pythagorean theorem is not possible in this situation for the black knight. Okay, so obviously a major strategical motif in the position is this open C file. Black does have some compensation for the loss of the pawn, and that black will be the first one to this file. On the other hand, I should be able to liquidate down that file, which would be more piece exchanges, and because I'm up a pawn, more piece exchanges tend to favor me. I want to get off this diagonal as quickly as I can. Looking at that square again. By moving my queen to d2, I'm creating a battery against this potential weakness. The issue is always, do I want to fix this weakness? Because black can liquidate it by moving a4, and it's quite good for black. I could have defended my bishop though with this, and that might now I'm looking at it, might have been better. It might have been better if I attack and black attempts to liquidate. I can move my pawns up. Then I have a lot of my pieces are behind, but this pawn becomes passed. Okay, then now my extra pawn becomes a passed pawn. So a5, a4, I will get a passed pawn by moving b3, b4. Blocking in my own dark squared bishop. It's okay, I don't mind necessarily having a bad bishop often defined as a bishop locked behind its own pawns. But bad bishops defend good pawns, and my dark squared bishop will be defending a good pawn on b4 because that pawn is passed. I could also play a2, a3. Pawns like to stand side by side, giving either one the option to advance under the protection of the other. An idea is try and open a file for myself against this queen. This is coming though. It's gonna pin my dark squared bishop, and it could get dangerous quickly. Could get really dangerous quickly. I think I need to make sure black does not fully leverage this open c file, which is the compensation for the lost pawn. So this is the move that suggests itself to me. Okay, I don't know if that really makes the situation any better for black. Creates some luft. I agree. Does prevent the bishop from coming to that diagonal, which it might have wanted to do if f5, f4 had ever been an option. I guess black is afraid of knight on f3 to g5, which I've been looking at and haven't found. This is a possibility, but let's get this rook into the game. This is also a possible move. Not right now though, because bang. So possibly I want my rooks here, here, here. Here's the plan, creating a passed pawn, outside passed pawn, which would be my passport to victory in the endgame. The outside passed pawn would give me good winning chances. So the idea is I have a 2-to-1 pawn majority here. I want to get it rolling. When we do eventually exchange off pawns, I will have a pawn on the outside of the position that can, either one, which can run to the end and queen. The dream of every pawn to become a queen. Here we go. Let's moving away one of my king's defenders. I don't believe an attack is coming. Now black is occupying the c file simply here. And let's exchange the rooks. Not a bad idea. It does take pressure off. This is still a possibility. But I think black can just kind of do nothing. Black can kind of just do nothing, and I'm going to challenge the c file. I think black was trying to get another piece over here to the queen side influence. Bishop's long range pieces. The dark diagonal has come to nothing for black. The long dark square diagonal, that is. So black is trying to relocate to more fruitful pastures. But let's go. Let's go. I have a very solid position. We're just gonna simply maneuver. Now I can really get a grip. I put my queen. Now I have a very strong grip, almost a winning position, perhaps even a win. I'm already quote unquote winning because of my extra pawn. However, it's never be too upset if you're down a pawn. There's very often compensation, and even without compensation, an extra pawn by itself with strong endgame play still has a very high probability of becoming a draw. You're not simply lost because you're down a pawn. There has to be other things going on. There typically needs to be another weakness for white to deal with to somehow leverage that extra pawn. So now we're going to move my queen. This is no longer really a threat. If I put my queen here, now the pawn can advance. I'm going to have to take it. The rook comes in. I want to get my knight into the game if possible. Not clear yet how I can get these pawns rolling, particularly. I guess so far, though, there is an e7 pawn blocking that dark squared bishop. So I do have some time, a moment in time, to get these pawns free. There's also bishop a3 with the idea of, look, if you ever do move your e7 pawn, I will exchange the dark squared bishops off. Sayonara to your strongest minor piece. And that's another piece exchanged with me having up a pawn. So I might do that. What if he comes here? I can even push. Rather interesting. The rook wants to infiltrate. Can't do that unsupported. Do I want to lead with my rook somehow? So there's the possibility of rook c2, form a battery behind the rook. That's not bad here. The advantage of this situation is quite strong at the moment. It's going to take him time. It's going to take him time. There's now, I wanted to put the knight in the game, so what if I do it? What if I do it? And I'm going to say, look, there's a pawn sitting there. Takes. I'm putting pressure here, probably there. I have a pawn. Now it's kind of blocking my own bishop. The rook went back, meaning black wants to play here. Black, okay, so I moved the bishop to a3, let's say, pinning this whole thing. Black decides to push, thinking, well, there was the bishop at the end of that open file. But then I come queen here. My sense is I want to get these dark square bishops off. I think his dark square bishop is much better. Much better. I come back to here. This, if he ever captured down the C file, it's check. I got to keep that in mind. All right, so we're having the paralysis of analysis, as Martin Luther King says. Kind of stuck on a plan here. So I think the two plans that I like is bishop on a3 to pin the e7 pawn, or rook c2 followed by queen c1 followed by rook to c6 followed by followed by rook takes pawn on g6 followed by checkmate. If I ever get that far. He's got to deal with that problem. How's he going to deal with it? If I do move rook c2 here, protect, he'll probably go, okay, this is about like a rook c2. He'll probably go I push, after he goes a5, a4, I push my pawn on b3 to b4. He pushes again. Now he's threatening this bishop. Bishop really hemmed in behind its own pawns. Let's go with this plan. I think I want to get these bishops off, and now black is simply going to allow it. Okay, the rook doing a lot of shuffling back and forth on his back rank, on Wendy's back rank. Can't quite go here yet. Now this is a little more of an idea because I'm not too worried about clogging up my dark squares with my dark square bishop gone. The weakness on a5, still tempted to try and fix it if I can. Queen c2, the obvious move. No longer attacking the weakness, but instead converted into a death grip on the C file, which this whole C file now may be my highway to victory. It was the compensation that black had for losing the pawn, but now that compensation is getting bad. The bot has just flashed me a message. Sometimes on chess.com, the bots will attack you. And Wendy, rated 1500 from Canada, apparently this bot, says, quote, "My attack is getting cold. I need to go get some more firewood." Typical coffeehouse chess speak. Yep, the knight wants to come into e4. Knight's always my bugbears. Don't like them on central squares. Don't like them on outposts. Often fail to play around them. I can now, though, play to a variety of squares. This, look, I have a whole panoply of different ideas open up. Meaning, I might be just sitting here yakking my jaw even longer. I like the idea of getting my knight now into the game with an attack. Moving with tempo with an attack on the g6 pawn. Knight centrally located, which will be full compensation for his knight getting to my e4 square. So I'll have a knight on e5. He'll have a knight on e4. This pawn will come forward. There could be a last moment desperation attack, but I believe my best move is simply queen c6. Now I'm threatening this pawn. Obviously, I'm threatening to take the queen. If the queens are exchanged, now my rook is threatening to take this pawn. He might have to move even queen, king there, then check. He's got problems. Rook can also come here. I want to get my king to the center. The highway to victory, as I've said, is this open C file. It is the key aspect of this position. Can I improve before I play any of these moves? So let's look at it. My pawn structure over here is solid. It's opposed by an equal number of pawns, namely 5, if you can count on your one hand, meaning I have no particular pawn advantage on the king side and no particular piece advantage either. The knight's relatively equivalent. Black even has a rook over here and maybe looking now for counterplay. Bishop, the king though airy, my king very well defended. The way I want to take advantage of his airy king if I can is keep my queen on the board. Keep my queen on the board because that king can be bullied around now that he's bereft of his pawn shield. I can play this way slow, and my queen is locked to the defense of the b pawn. This is the move that I feel cries out to be played. Now black is going to have to deal with some concrete issues. This is not the way to deal with these issues. What is black thinking? Well, I guess black is saying if he takes my e6 pawn, I can come to the open C file myself. Oh no, that was a mouse slip. While I was doing my analysis. Hey folks, sometimes that happens. I wanted to move my king towards the center. Instead, I mouse slipped and he moved to the h2 square. Black not particularly actively taking advantage. Well, at least now there's no check. Okay, so yeah, okay. So let's take a breath, recalibrate. Black didn't do anything about this pawn. We're gonna take it. I'm attacking the knight, so I have a tempo. The knight comes into e4, attacking here because my king is now gone. I do have a check. Things are going to get crazy. Things are going to get crazy. If I let this knight come in, is there any sort of mate? I guess not really. I can always escape. I can simply defend the pawn again. I've wasted time, but now he comes to the C file. So I think I'm just going to take and then come back to the C file. And if he wants to take my F7 pawn, which is just bloody unfortunate that I had this mouse slip, that's good. I'll just move my king in with a tempo against the knight and then continue to try to get to the center. I think once I get my king centralized and my rook controlling this C file and being up material and also getting my knight centralized, I think that's more than enough accumulation of advantages to win the game. So let's take the check. He's moves the king to Wendy moves the king to H7, defending the pawn. Now I'm going to come back. I just don't want to allow. Wait a minute. Okay, if I go here and here, I might want to just threaten another pawn then. I might just have to allow the rook in. What's he going to do if I come streaking across and attack this A5 pawn? Turns out defending the C file isn't necessarily a good idea because A4 could be played. Black's getting a lot of activity. I want to mobilize my pawn majority. I've been talking about that the whole game. Could also defend the rook by moving the knight to the centralized square E4. This is coming though, and I don't like it. The pawns won't be able to defend each other. What is black going to do if I play my rook to 6? Okay, he's going to come down here. Fine. Let's take the pawn. I'm also going to take this one. Here he comes down to the 7th. This is the activity I was discussing. I reckoned the activity wasn't sufficient to win. I could take pawn and pawn. Then I'll have a passed centralized pawn, which is vicious. Vicious for him. He will get my A7. I don't know if that's of particular consequence. Let's keep ripping pawns. And now I can save this pawn and start running. Black's in big trouble. Black is in big trouble in this situation. It's not looking good for black. Black could take either of these pawns, instead move the king rather innocuously to the G7 square. I don't really see the point. Once I take this pawn here on F5, now I've got 3 pawns connected and passed. Yeah, black will only have 1 pawn left to work with to try and queen, and that doesn't appear to be happening. Black would want to attack my G2 square with the rook down this second rank, but the knight not well placed for that because the knight can't move along the Pythagorean theorem. So where's the Pythagorean theorem, you ask? You see this? That's a right triangle, and that's the hypotenuse. And knights are not allowed to move along the hypotenuse. All right, pawns. I'm going to keep grabbing them. Now what are you going to do? I got 3 passed pawns. Now you come. Now I got 2 passed pawns here. 2 passed pawns here. Is there a threat in this situation? I might want to move this knight. Maybe by going here. I might want to also start to advance. Come here. This knight not particularly a threat. Not particularly a threat. Notice how my knight and king are close together. This is another advantage of my opening system. Is I castle and I've got this knight on F3. Very often that knight on F3 won't get into the game, as this knight in particular has not. However, a knight is a very, very good defender around a king. It's just the geometry of the way the knight and the king move. It's kind of similar to the way that a knight and a queen are excellent for attacking. They complement each other well. So in my system, once I've got the knight to F3 and let's say I bathtub as I did, then I have a very strong position, a very defensible position, and I have a lot of faith in this knight. I don't mind as a player attacking with all my pieces, but leaving one knight behind to guard my king. I don't mind it at all, and I've had a lot of success with that. All right, but the question now is, how do I win this game? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns to 1. I'm up the equivalent of 5 points of material. I can bully this knight now because it's no longer defended on its outpost. It can start pushing pawns. Past pawns must be pushed. I probably want to just leave this knight alone. Black may not have time to go gobble pawns on his own. I have to decide the best way to do this. Rooks can often have a problem against 2 pawns if they're standing side by side, because the rook can't easily attack either of them. So what if I put these pawns side by side, just looking at the geometry? Let's say I move my pawn from A2 to A3. And the rook decides, well, I'm going to attack this pawn, the A3 pawn. So I'll say, well, then good, I can protect it. And then now I'm going to attack this backward pawn. Yeah, that's true, but I'll bring my rook over. I'm threatening this. Or I could just do that right away. And if black plays here, I'm just going to defend. If black decides to go after this pawn and I run, then black may not be able to get this A file in time. I'll get my rook behind the pawn. And so let's run the passed pawn. Here we go. Now what are you going to do, black? I'm running. He's attacking the pawn and the knight. Oh, look, the rook was pinned. Not bad. Not bad, black. Not bad, black at all. I'm in trouble because knight takes knight. Okay, I'm in trouble. I didn't see this tactic. Very good. Very good on Wendy. Wendy got in. She got in her licks. We're going to give kudos to Wendy, the 1500 rated bot from Canada. I can't move my rook away to defend the pawn. But I can't simply move the pawn. Okay, we're just going to move out of the attack. The knight is still protected by the rook. Black can try to harass it here, and then I can defend the pawns laterally. Well, this is the move. Knight coming in. The knight appears to want all by itself or in conjunction with the rook to try and stop these advancing pawns on the A and B file. Knight's not very good, though, at stopping pawns on the edge of the board. I like my position here. I can continue to advance pawns. I am allowing my rook to be pinned, which is rather unpleasant. Rook here, attacking the knight with a tempo, getting out of the pin. My rook is cutting the king off from where my major push is happening on the queen side. If I play here, rook here, doesn't. Pawn can come here, leaving these 2 pawns on their own. I do want to get my knight into the game. This is possible. This look is actually kind of good, because that way I get my knight to the central square and I'm defending my rook. Since the knight has moved away, it's not so critical for my knight to defend the king anymore. Sorry, again, paralysis of analysis. I have so many ways to win this. It's just a matter of not falling for these little tricks like I almost did with the pin. More pawns running. Knight is defending the D pawn. That means the E pawn can come up the board. One of these pawns is going to get home. The rook still wants to stay where it is, prevent the king from moving away. Although if the king ever moves away, that's going to be sayonara, good night for black's remaining pawn. Oh boy. Well, I'm spending a lot of time on a position that should be easily winnable, but this is where I can go wrong. One idea here is d4 to d5, followed by centralizing my knight. Now the rook can't get behind the passed pawn, and I can try to continue the journey. However, I'm cutting my rook off from my own pawns. Passed pawns must be pushed. Jeez. Do you see what's happening here? Do you see what is happening here? Didn't look at the threats. Well, this is going to be very illustrative to you. You can probably see my face is turning red. I'm going to have to play a defensive move here. Okay, now I'm defending the pawn. And I'm going to lose the rook and the knight and the game. What a terrible disgrace. Run. He can't do it. He can't take the knight. I think I can. I think I can make it. I don't know. I think I can make it. Rooks cannot stop two pawns. It's rapid chess being played here. How are you going to stop this? I can still win this game in spite of dropping my pieces due to silly nonsense. I can still win this game. Which piece? Which pawn, queens? Does it matter? Does it matter? Let's queen this one. Let's queen this one. Alright, now we're just going to finish him. Well, that was just lucky. That was just like I had a preponderance of material, so even down a rook in terms of pieces remaining on the board. So this forms the L. You see this L? That's how you trap a king. You keep the L going. Got to be careful. He moved into the L, so we're going to move our king up. We got to be careful of the stalemate. I want to remove his last pawn, so nothing black does now will allow a win. Black never has more than a draw. Black is still in the L. Okay, now I got to be careful. If I come here, black goes here, and that's mate. Or I can continue the L just to illustrate. Well, that's plain. If I see the mate, I should take the mate, right? There's no better move than checkmate. Well, I was lucky. I was lucky. You saw me grossly mishandle the ending there. I'm deeply embarrassed. For that reason, I spoiled a good game. But I did manage to beat the bot Wendy 1500. So we're moving up to the next advanced bot next time I play. I hope you enjoyed that game and the commentary. Have a great day.